sometimes, unfortunately, the fear of failure can overwhelm the people doing it.
Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to see you again. In today's podcast, I have a very, very special guest, and I will talk to him about the entrepreneurial mindset, how entrepreneurship combines with charity, and how the relationship with money influences business success, and what you need to know if you are thinking about getting a fundraising or attracting an investor to your business. My guest today is a very special person, and I'm very honored to have him here with me. His name is Oliver Rothschild, and he is the former chairman of UNICEF, a renowned investor, entrepreneur, and thought leader in the realms of finance and business strategy. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Oliver has built a reputation for his keen insights into the market trends, innovative investment strategies, and his ability to transform startups into industry leaders. Welcome, Oliver, and thank you so much for accepting my invitation today.
Well, thank you very much, Maria. It's a pleasure to speak to you and to be interviewed. And it's very kind of you. That's a very positive introduction. I've been around for a little longer than 2 decades, unfortunately. I changed my date of birth according to what audience I speak to. But I'm very keen that the Z generation is something I'm very aware of. And actually, I call myself the B and C generation. And they look at me and they say, "Why do you say that?" So I say, well, if in a game of Monopoly, I've passed go already, so I'm already going around the next circle. I'm already B, C, and I'm looking for D. So, and thank you very much for the reference. I was only on the appeals committee for UNICEF. It didn't have one, but I've done other things also pro bono and charity-wise, because I think it's very important to have a much larger overview of what's going on, not just in business, but how the charitable sector, how the non-profit sector has got a good connection with what's going on in business, not just isolated away from business itself.
And speaking about that, I wanted to ask you, how do you see that doing charity and pro bono activities help somebody to grow their business acumen?
Well, first of all, if you have an initiative, some of your customers could well be those institutions themselves, and also people who work for those institutions. So you cannot isolate the different sectors of the whole business or the whole work community or those people who are doing volunteer work. So it's quite important to be able to have a good overview, a much more global, not just geographical, but the global overview, what's going on in the marketplace. So I think it's quite important to do that. And I'm very happy to have done that. I look at diversity as well, people who have not got necessarily all the abilities or the access to actually growing. I do a lot of stuff of female empowerment. I'm the global ambassador of the Global Woman Club, amongst other things, and I enjoy doing it. It's important that it's done with enjoyment. And then the sense of the enjoyment actually encourages people to listen or to learn or to be mentored or to be able to congregate with business as well.
Very, very interesting. And I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned also diversity and helping people from all kind of sectors to succeed, and also working with a lot of entrepreneurs. What do you think are some key mindset, let's say, shifts that somebody should be aware of and make if they want to build a successful business?
The mindset is to be able to concentrate on what the initiative is and not to be diverted. So even though I say that, people say, "What do you do?" And I say, "I specialize in diversity." But that's because I do specialize in diversity. But you need to have quite a clear view and proposition about what you're offering in the marketplace. And I have come across a few people where I get more confused, and if I get confused and I'm on their side, then the going into the open will be, other people will be confused and they will turn off. So it's a question of being quite focused on what you're doing, and also show whoever your audience is, whether it's investors or people you're working with or mentors, your commitment and the understanding of what you are actually trying to portray as what your business is.
Mm-hmm. So clarity and focus, and articulating clearly what you want to serve the world
Absolutely.
with, right?
Absolutely. And so I have various maxims that are quite well known. I say, when you have a business, whatever your initiative, please explain that to your grandmother. And if your grandmother understands it, then there's a good chance that your B2B or your B2B2C or your B2C should understand what you're doing. And I use the examples of Airbnb and Uber. I always do this because I don't need to know the back office complexity of Uber. It's a taxi service. It's just a new way of using technology to make it more accessible. I have my own criticism about Uber now, but it's what it does. It's just part of what was already a sector of cars for hire. The same with Airbnb. Airbnb is just, rooms. People used to rent their rooms out quite happily, but it just is a system that's meant to be far more global, far more easy to access, etc., etc. Even though that may have its own criticism. So there was nothing new, but the technology that they used, the back office, was highly complex. I don't, as the customer, I don't need to know what it is. I just need to have the seamlessness of what they're offering to be the thing that I'm using as a site.
Exactly, and mentioning Airbnb, I also have their quote, their marketing message in my mind, like a home away from home. It's so easy, so simple. You're very clear on what you're getting. So yes, thank you for sharing that. And because I'm a business coach, so I work with people to help them transform their mindset in order for them to be able to act and do what it needs to be done so they are successful. And one reason I've seen why people tend to be very diluted in their business focus, as you mentioned, is the fear of failure. So sometimes they tend to have more options or not to be very focused on one business or one segment because they're very scared for not succeeding. What can you tell me about that? How did you train or work with your mentees and even with yourself when this fear appears? Because it's a human feeling, the fear.
I mean, fear of failure, sometimes, unfortunately, the fear of failure can overwhelm the people doing it, and one has to there's, from the mentor, I mean, you talk about coaching, I mean, I think you're more mentor than the coach, and there used to be a distinction between mentorship and coaching. Now it's a bit blurred, but is that if you are a mentor and you are yourselves completely committed to what the initiative is, the mentor is somebody, all the people around the person or people are the ones to give encouragement and to say, actually, do not allow this to happen in your mind, because actually we wouldn't be around you if we didn't think there was a chance of success. So that's the one side. The other side is, of course, especially in the States, is the people who have been the most successful have actually gone through failure. I mean, it's a bit overdone now where they're saying, if you have failure, you're going to really be successful. In actual fact, the most successful people have failure. I mean, the word failure is a very negative thing, and years ago was something to be avoided and to hide your head in shame. But from failing things, I mean, if we use Amazon as an example, Amazon nearly failed twice. So now look, nobody's going to criticize Amazon about the success rate. And of course, the difference is, in my view, since many of the very big successful companies are all software based, so the actual product is intangible. So if you make a glass, a rival to a glass, a wine glass, and the thing collapses in production, well, you failed. That's very easy. When it comes to software is a whole different aspect of business. And there have been many, in a way, there have been some failures which actually been proven to have been successful, but just in other people's hands. So there's much more of a type of, tundra, type of, different scene there. So, and it's been overused that failure moves to success. My view is, if you have clarity about what you're doing, and if what you're doing is a marketplace for it, then with the right mentorship, with the right strategy, and then the right funding, there's a good chance you're going to succeed. Positiveness is more important than negativeness. If you're negative, you're always going to be negative. I think more important may be people who've not been an entrepreneur understand what entrepreneurship is and the risks that are attached to entrepreneurship, where failure can be very high because not every entrepreneur succeeds or not every initiative succeeds. So again, to explain, this is not a rarity of thought, but don't let that thought swamp the positiveness of what you're doing.
Exactly. And fear, I love to not use this word, but maybe, to use the word learning. It's a lesson. It's an experience where you have the opportunity to learn something and do it again. And just in the end, as you said, if you're concise and if you're focused and committed and you have a mission of serving people through what you want to develop, you'll do it. So thank you very much for sharing that. And also you mentioned the risk management and how people perceive this fear of losing money, which is very related to their relationship and perception about money. Because you are a very successful business person and you have a good relationship with money, can you share what are the key principles about money that can help somebody to build a healthy relationship and not feel overwhelmed about money or feel that they don't have power with money? So what are the principles that you have and you would share with somebody who has problems with relating to money?
So is money the evil or everything? I don't know. There's that statement: money can have negative influence. So they're I call my goalposts the extremes. I like to overemphasize the extreme. The one extreme is that you're able to raise money for a company, and the next thing is you go and buy yourself a yacht. So you've blown the money. That's the extreme. And you come across things like that. You've got the money, and you've allocated the money in the wrong place. The other is that you've actually asked for too little money because you're scared about asking for money, and that actually the business implodes because you just have to go around finding more money. And by doing that, you're not actually concentrating on the business itself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So having been, years ago, I was involved in a film fund called the Ultimate Film Fund. And I used to meet people who would be looking, and this taught me very much about what's going on now in what I call this new sector of technology, where most of the companies are all soft, one way or another. Many of them are software companies where you are sometimes plucking from the sky actually how much money you need, because all these clipboard figures about saying, and the market is $18 billion worth. And I'm going, have you gone around with 6,000 people into different countries? How do you get those numbers? It doesn't really impress me. There's either a market for it or not. And are you going to capture all 18 billion of your potential customers? So the alternative is that, or the worry is, the film business. One guy used to come round to me and say, we're raising X million for this film, and I've left my job. And he was a very senior advertising person, and the job is earning big money. And he kept coming back to me over 2 years. They were still trying to find the money. And the money was something like, let's just example, was $12 million. All right. And I said, and he said, we've already raised 10 million. So I said, well, can you not rework your budget? Right. And how long have you been looking for this money? It's about 2.5 years. So I said, half of the money you're looking for is what you've lost in your own earnings. So that, in a way, Tara, was a very good signal for me, is how early stage companies are worried. Well, sometimes they're not worried and sometimes they are. They should be concerned about how they're presenting themselves to get the money. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But they should also be quite open and honest about how much money they need for the tasks that are actually going to be presented. So very often I say to people when they're asking for X, I say, what would you do with 2X? Well, if we had 2X, we'd do X, Y, and Z. So I said, well, why don't you ask for the 2X? Because X, Y, and Z are obviously things you need to do. And within a month or 3 months, you're going to be going around, wearing out the leather soles of asking for money and taking away the concentration of growing a business. So it's a type of mentorship. If you're going to ask for money, it's the same way of asking whether you're going to ask for $100,000 or $500,000. You're still going to ask people to be able to put their confidence of putting their money into for an initiative that they, by giving you the money, by agreeing to have the money, that they actually feel is the right initiative for them to allocate that money to. So you've got to have, again, it's a training process. Again, the markets move because at one time when I was involved, you'd get companies saying, well, £20,000 or £40,000 and going, now on valuations were plucked out the air of valuation, let's say 200,000. Now I don't see any companies that are less than 7 figures. It's the same time. They're at the same development as they were 15 years ago, being very early stage. So there are all these different. The market has matured, and the market's actually pulled back a bit as we, because of global economic problems and global political problems. The market has become not necessarily more professional, but much harder than it was 2 years ago. I mean, everybody says that. I also believe that the press are very excited to make it sound harder, to be able to fill more column inches. Because my view is there is plenty of money around. There's mostly more money around than there was 2 years. That's a question of the barrier to get that money has become harder. That's my view.
And I've heard this belief in young entrepreneurs who, or even not yet entrepreneurs, but young people who want to build something, and they say, oh, you need to have money in order to start a business, or you need to have money, a lot of money in order to make a lot of money. And of course, this is not 100% the reality. And I wanted to ask you, when somebody could know that it is the right time to start going outside to raise funds? When is the moment? When you start a business? When is the right time when you should think about getting an investor or raising funds?
I assume that most of these companies we're talking about have some form of mentor. Hopefully the mentor has been somebody who's been in business and understands enough about the business to be able to give the advice to say, but agreement between the actual founder and the mentor, this is the right time. Yeah. And also, presumably, it's all part of the strategy, because you need to have a business plan, and that's the strategy. So we can bootstrap for 1 month, and then we need to go friends and family the other 2-3 months. But during that time, we're already going out. I mean, that's got to be a strategy. Again, a couple of my time, what I call mantras, and they're known, is you need a business plan, and not necessarily the old-fashioned type, but you do need a business plan. The business plan is you're pushing the things you've learned, the initiative you want to have happen, and the strategy all go into a formal business plan. And I say, give me your 3 wishes, because that's going to be the nucleus. In those 3 wishes, don't tell me you want money, because that's a waste of wish. I know, unless you are BP or Texaco or Google, everybody needs money when they're growing their business, right? Whether it's series A, B, C, D, whatever, you need money. So the 3 elements are what you want. So is it you need better staff, you need technical staff, you need an office, you need whatever. That is the nucleus of the business plan, which will then explain why you need the money. And then you put figures, to how much that's going to turn to cost. Also, what you think your profitability, your cash flow, or your profitability is like to be. A lot of that is plucking it out of the air, many assumptions, but the assumptions have got to be realistic to what's going on in the marketplace and to your knowledge that you've accumulated by speaking to people who've got some business experience and also your own experience from the sector in which you are trying to push your own initiative.
Yes, and I thank you for that, because I really love what you said. In order to grow, you need to be open to the idea that you need to give away a parts of your business. Another limiting belief I heard is like, oh, but I don't want to give away my business. I want it to be all mine. And if I get an investor, I need to give. Okay, but if it's all yours, but it's small,
I call it
what's
the nanny syndrome.
nanny syndrome. I love that. I love that. Nanny syndrome.
So here we go. You've had a child and you want to go working and you have a nanny and you never go out to work because you will never let the nanny look after the child, whether to feed it or to bathe it. And that's very often with companies where the founder, how many founders end up owning 100% of their company? I don't know any, unless you're a billionaire and you set up a property, I just don't know it. So again, it's part of the mentorship or coaching, if you want to call it, of explaining that if your business is worth nothing when you start, and after the second or third fundraise, assuming you've agreed to release some of the shares you have, is now worth 5 million. If you went to release anything, you would never get the money because there's nobody going to give the money to say, I don't want to share the company. And in actual fact, the obverse of that is clever money, right? So clever money where the people who are putting the money in could contribute hugely to the success of the company. And if you are too harsh about that, you'll never get necessarily the right people to be the investors with the clever money. So again, it's a question of coaching or mentoring to explain you will not end up with 100% of the company. You cannot go to people and say, my company, which still has yet to make a profit, and in year 6 will make a profit, and I'm not going to give away anything, and I may give away 2% of the company. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, there are, there's ways of understanding the valuation of your company to know how much is sensible without necessarily losing control of the first fundraise, but without being sensible. And there's others funding schemes like loan notes and conversions and things like that. That gets more technical, so that you actually can retain a greater share of the company because your company is attractive enough to investors that they will use other schemes than just taking your shares or the value of your shares to begin with. But again, there are many founders who don't know about these different fundraising schemes that are quite acceptable, but you need to be professional about it, and there has to be a proper criteria as to why it will be acceptable to an investor, because they believe sufficiently in the company will make the profit to be able to pay the coupon on the loan note, etc., etc.
And about that, I'm really curious, and I think people who are watching would like to know, what are your personal criteria when you decide to invest in an initiative? What are the things you're looking for?
You asked me, you gave me a note about that. So I wrote back, people. It's the people. But I mean, to me, it really is the people. I mean, to me, when there's people say, I've given up now explaining what I do because I've done a few things in my short term business. But I could go over a list of what I've done. I'm the youngest person you ever interviewed, so I'm very happy about that. But it is the people. You're working with people you want to work with. You believe in the people, you like people, and you like hearing what's going on. Okay, but if I'm more specific, it's the dedication, right? The understanding of what they're doing, and the proposition. Those are the key things. But if you've identified the right person, you will understand what he or she is doing. You'll see the dedication. You'll see the positiveness, and you'll want to be part of that with them. Yeah. But I
love that. So dedication, commitment, and proposition. These 3 things you're looking at. So if any of you are thinking about raising money, I think the professional investors will look about these 3 traits in yourself. Not so much in numbers.
Maria, one thing that does turn me off is when they say, not that this is unique, that's fine, although that word is often overused, but my proposition is world beating. Yeah. You can
Mm-hmm.
only call that when it has become well beating. I mean, there were many
Clearly.
people saying it was well beating. Well, if it was so well beating, they'd be not coming to me. They'd already be going to Elon Musk or something like that. And he'd say, yeah, here's 10, 20 million. It's so good. Do you know what I mean? I just got to be you've got to be realistic. It's the same as I said before, the clipboard of saying there is, the whole market is 180 billions worth of the market. Okay, fine. How much of that market are you taking? How did you know it's 180? Where is the facts and figures of somebody with a clipboard to know? One last thing is also when they on the ask, and it's changed now because the amounts asked in early stages become more rounded. But I used to get things saying we're looking for £46,950. I'm going, what happens if the postage? You got the postage wrong by £50. I mean, they're trying to show that they've worked out the last digit. And that's the reverse of saying there's an £18 billion market. Yeah, one's got to be quite realistic and be sensible about figures, in my view.
Yeah, so also being realistic about figures, not trying to exaggerate what you're promising or try to look like you are very, very well calculated in your numbers, but more about mission, right? Like for you to see people are committed, they have a mission and they're not going to stop. And about that, I was curious, what do you think it's your life mission? Because you've done so many great things. What do you think it's your life?
My life mission. Well, presumably, the people think, I don't know why, that I'm old enough to be retired, but I'm busier now than I've ever been, and I enjoy it. So that's my mission. You've got to enjoy. I mean, obviously, there's some days I don't enjoy, but overall, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't enjoy it. Yeah. But also, they say, well, you're giving back. But I mean, I do. I like helping early stage companies. I like encouraging them. I like to draw out of them what they're doing, what he or she is doing. Draw out. Don't be shy. Unless it's on paper, you can speak to people like myself, and we can hear and say, well, possibly, you're not the biggest. You're not going to be the biggest software. Maybe, but you've still got a very interesting proposition. So, to me, I am not just giving back. I'm taking. I'm learning every day. So again, a mantra of mine is never stop learning to learn. Always learn, because it's just so much. There's so much going on, and there's so much new, not just technology. I mean, now I'm a little bit aware of the worry of things like AI and machine learning, because there has to be a worry. If it's misused, and it can be misused, I think cookies are totally misused. You and I are going to have a conversation. All of a sudden, I'm going to get somewhere. One of my things is going to say, these are the inexpensive flights to Bucharest, even though we haven't even talked about it. So technologies, there has to be a little bit of control. Now, who controls that? I don't know. The UN, the government, business, that. But never stop learning to learn. Always hear what's going on. Always have your own view, have other people's views. I mean, if you close yourself off, you don't realize what's going on, and you will never, in my view, you'll never succeed if you really are so narrow focused. You're not going to have a time of success of your business.
So your life mission is to learn and help others learn.
Yes.
Support people to learn and grow. That's
I have one other thing which is not very popular, is general knowledge. I am shocked by the lack of general knowledge in those generations I've left. So the WXYZ, I've gone round the clock there. General knowledge, it's so important. Gives you an overview, and then you can talk with a bit more sense about the $18 million marketplace. A little bit more, have a bit more sense that that you're not going to sell sand, in the mountains to Switzerland. I mean, I'm just saying, the lack of general knowledge, I think, is quite serious, quite frankly, and not to relate too much to wiki doctors and wiki, Wikipedia is fantastic, but all of a sudden people become expert medical people overnight. It's got to be. We've got to take this in its right place at the right time.
So give yourself time to learn, not fast food learning, but like really study in the areas that you're inspired to go and read books and make your own opinions, not to ask ChatGPT about its conclusion on something. I truly love that, and I'm trying to do this myself in my area of expertise and where I'm inspired. And yes, it helps a lot to study more sciences, more disciplines, and make your own conclusions than just take others people's opinion. And the last question that I have for you is, what is the biggest lesson that you perceive you had in your career? And what is the message you'd like to share so other people would learn from that also?
The biggest lesson to me is because technology is the backbone of most sectors. So I'm really from the arts, so art, fashion, music, theatre, film. That's my sector. Yeah, that's what I like. I've been chairman of art gallery. I've funded films, etc. I love art. But if I'd said 20 years ago that art is art would use as operational, side would be technology, it would be like telling, horror. And the biggest lesson I learned is also to be open to change. And I remember the first computer in my school, and people would ask my opinion. And this was we were very lucky. We were one of the first schools in the world. It took the whole classroom up to try and put this computer in. And I remember walking into the classroom and he wanted my opinion. I said, it'll never happen. It'll never work. So I regret, if I have a regret, that I didn't be more open-minded. And now I'm saying, have to be open-minded. Look at GDPR. Look at all the things that are coming in, which technology has offered. Right, the good things, the things that have been able to allow us to move on. And one example, in my view, is the financial crises that we've had over the last 20 years, on and off, are much shorter than they would have been in old times, because technology has allowed, with communication and with knowledge, things have allowed the ups and downs, because there are downs as well as ups, to be a much shorter period, and not necessarily a whole decade. So to me, and also really having had that regret, is not to type of wallow in the regret, not to keep going back to the regret. I'm now being positive. I'm trying to pretend that I know much more about technology than I do, but at least I know how to switch a computer on. There's those type of things. I was scared of Uber. I was scared of Zoom, because, this is technology. I now use them as an everyday tool. So, to me, to accept what technology can do, but also to be quite aware that technology is not the answer to everything.
So to have to use it, not to be scared of it, but not rely on it like all your life.
Well, look what happened 2 days. Look what happened 2 days ago to all air transports in Europe.
Oh yeah.
We are so reliant that we couldn't go back to any manual. I mean, to me, that's where the danger is. And unfortunately, the economic and the political danger that we are not just reliant, but also the systems are the backup of the system. I would have to question, because there should have been a backup of the backup of the bbackup. Yeah.
Like old school backup when nothing works in technology. Like even in your house, if these houses, smart houses, everything it's connected, and if something happens, if the electricity just goes down, you cannot enter the house, you cannot open the drawers, you cannot do anything because everything is technology. So yeah, I agree that we need to have this balance between technology, which is great, but also having the backup of the manual part of things. And also in mental development and coaching, for example, now a lot of people in my industry speak about the robots that will coach people and all these tools that are going to replace human coaches. And I perceive that there might be value in that, I'm sure, but you need to have balance into the human connection and connecting with a human, especially when you want to work on your mental or emotional blockages, then rely on some very smart chatbots that can give you good questions. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's a very important message, especially for Gen Z generation. So it was a very, very inspiring talk. I've personally learned a lot, and I have some ideas already about my business after speaking to you. So thank you for that. And I'm sure the people who are watching also have some ideas and already have more clarity about how to continue to grow their business in their mission. And so thank you so much, guys, for watching. I'll see you on the next Money Talks. And thank you again, Oliver, for joining and being so open with us today.
Thank you very much, Maria, and thank you, everybody, for watching. Hope you enjoy it.